tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They're hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to say, talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit.
There's a big appeal that's hit him on the pad. He's out. Lions gone. New South Wales are 9 down. Onto Sydney Road, and it's hit a car. Oh, I think it's hit a car. What a way to bring up your 50.
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast, the longest-running cricket podcast in Australia, going for, well, we're in our 13th year now. I'm Menners, and joining me from Melbourne, that's right, I've let a navy blue bagger into the podcast, Damian Watson from SEN, cricket broadcaster extraordinaire over the weekend. I saw. How are you?
Oh, that's kind of you, Menners. Same to you. And how are you going? Are you starting to get warmed up now?
I am getting so warmed up. Cricket's coming. I can feel. Well, it hasn't really stopped. I mean, I had a great interview with Lisa Sthalekar, which was released on Monday. I really enjoyed talking to her. She's such a wealth of knowledge, knows so much about the game, so well traveled. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it. A couple of things that jumped out to me was her discussion around the Indian development of women's cricket. We talked about it, and she brought up that, they've got about 40 players that they have sort of divided up into a basically A, B, and C group that play a lot of cricket against each other. And Damien, that right there just shows the resources of Indian cricket, that they can invest in 40 young players and be sort of playing them off against each other. And we saw in the series, you commentated on their quality.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they were found out a little bit in the 4-day match, but there's no doubt they're on the trajectory that's upward, Menners. And I reckon, as I said to you last week, I think it's almost inevitable that they'll eventually become number one in the world, such as the depth, the love over there as well. I think it'll grow and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Also enjoyed her talking about the Major League Cricket. So if you want to learn more about what's been happening in the States, she gives some great information there, having commentated on it. Also ran into one of our competitors today, basically, literally, Ed Cowan, who hosts the Grandstand Cricket podcast with Corbin Middlemas. I was sort of walking along doing what some people call my hot girl walk, and Ed was running along, and I heard this voice from the distance. He's my favorite online cricket troll. And Ed was talking to me, so I said, he said he'd been enjoying the podcast, so he might be listening. So thank you for tuning in, Ed. And if someone would have drove past, they just would have heard me yelling back, across the street, "I'm not an online troll." So anyway,
you just provoked them. That's the difference. You provoked the trolls.
That's right, absolutely. So good to see Eddie, and good to see he's been listening to the podcast, and then. This afternoon chatted to Mike Whitney, and good news, he's booked to come into studio next week. So I'll be chatting to Big Roy. We'll be talking a little bit about the current cricket news, but also diving into the second half of his career, which is actually more a media career, Damon. Exactly. So many young people don't even know his cricket. They know him from Who Dares Win. So if no one can spin a yarn like Big Roy. So great to chat to him, and glad he's coming into the studio next week. How was your commentating on the Australia A 4-day game? Because were you commentating when Ginger scored 100?
No, Emma Gallagher, my colleague, was commentating when she got 100. But what a performance. And I noticed you text me during the coverage as well, Metters, saying, I told you about Ginger. You declared her, didn't you?
I did.
Before the series started. And yeah, she's got plenty of scope for improvement as well, but is still in her early 20s. She's a good all-rounder. Look, with her century, there were times where I reckon she was dropped about 3 or 4 times. So there was a bit of good fortune there. She wasn't the most comfortable probably in the first half of her innings, but once she got to her 50, she looked far more comfortable after that. So I think once she irons out a few of those nerves, she could be a great player. And I reckon eventually she could come into that Australian squad. We even talks, I know Molly Strano mentioned it as well, and a couple of others, Kelly Appleby, saying that she could be parachuted in as early as the ODI World Cup. I don't know if that will happen, but there's been a few discussions about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, she is a gun, and it must have been fun to commentate on cricket in the middle of football season. I'm a little bit envious of that, deep in winter, getting a fix of cricket commentary. All right, well, let's get into all the cricket headlines brought to you by Piccolo Podcast. And let's start, since the last episode, and Damian and I recorded, Australia lost the ODI series to the South Africa. So they have a big finish. We'll talk about their third game. But in the second game, went similar to the first game. South Africa made 277. Then Australia were all out for 193. Josh Inglis, 87 off 74 balls. So Australia lost the one-day series 2-0. And the only positive was really Inglis's innings in that second game. He hadn't made many runs in this top-end series, so good to see him in the runs again. And Ngidi for South Africa took 5 for 42. And I have to say, Damien, it's hard to read too much into this 50-over series, considering we're a couple of years away from the 50-over World Cup. You could just tell with Australia's batting lineup, it's still got to reset after losing Maxwell, Smith, Stoinis. So I think I'm not worried about this series loss, put it that way.
No, and I don't know. What did you make of the ground itself? I mean, was it seen to be a bit of a kindergarten ground at times, particularly with the way Game 3 went out? I'm not criticising it, by the way, but it just seemed like the batsmen of both sides at various stages treated the conditions almost with contempt. It was a very conducive batting wicket at times.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll get into the third game. You know, Australia made 2 for 431 and a string of records, so many to talk about. I've got a whole list of records that Australia knocked off. But just on that ground, on your comments around the ground, when I was watching Australia's innings in Game 3, I actually didn't mind it because when Australia goes overseas, if you look at grounds in India and England, they're often so small. And, Australia, we play on the biggest ground. So I didn't mind it, but you're right. It's a lot smaller than most Australian grounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's to be expected, I suppose, being in the top end, but gee, it was almost treated with contempt in a way. But look, ultimately, it was a good performance from South Africa to win the series. Game 3, I don't know if they had their heart necessarily set in at Menners to a certain degree because they knew they had won the series. But, yeah, I think it goes to show that South Africa is still pretty strong in the 50-over format. They've still got room for improvement, particularly in terms of building upon their depth. But I think overall, both sides would take a bit out of that series. And I think it was a success overall holistically as well in terms of interest, particularly given it was in the middle of the footy season, Menners. There was a fair amount of interest there, wasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. In that Game 3, I want to talk a little bit about it because it was so momentous. Australia making the second highest ever one-day score, 2 for 431. You remember their 4-3-4 against South Africa in Joburg in 2006. And this game was played on Sunday afternoon. And although it was a dead rubber, it was a sellout. The people in Mackay, they never get to see the Australian team like this. So I was so glad they put on a performance. Yeah, I've heard the same mail that the South African team one foot was on the plane already. They're off to play a one-day series somewhere else. And apparently they had an early flight the next morning. So they were keen to get the game over with and get back to the hotel, having won the series already. Wian Mulder, where his 7 overs went for none for 93, which is runs per over of over 13. So an incredible batting display by Australia. Travis Head, 142 off 103 deliveries. Mitch Marsh, 100 off 106 deliveries. I thought Travis Head played pretty well. Mitch Marsh, I thought it was, to me, that was an experienced pros innings. I think Marsh summed up that it was pretty easy out there and that he just needed to get some runs. He just get 100 under the belt. It's great for your confidence. Yep, go on.
I was just going to say, with Mitch Marsh, how much do you read into the performances this series? He was pretty good for much of it, but how much do you read into it as to what he's capable of producing going forward?
Oh, I think it's really good. I mean, he's been pretty good in white ball cricket for a while now, and up the top of the order is probably a good spot for him. He can clear the infield. He did bat well. He was in good form during the IPL for a lot of it, so it's no surprise to me. Had a quiet tour to the West Indies, but really bounced back. He and Travis Head put on 250. I like that partnership, left-right hand combination, and those two really laid the foundations. And then out came Cameron Green, who smoked 118, brought up the second fastest one-day international century for Australia of just 47 balls, only behind Glenn Maxwell's 40-ball effort against the Netherlands. Green, 118 not out of 55 deliveries. Alex Carey, 50 not out of 37. As I said, Australia, 431 for 2. Great viewing on a Sunday afternoon to see the Australians clear the rope so often. And that innings of Cameron Green's was breathtaking, the best of him. Poor Marnus didn't get a bat. He was scheduled to go in there, but missed out on the road and had to watch it all. But balls were disappearing. And, you know, Cameron Green, when you look at the run he's put together since returning to the side, you know, had a bit of a quiet World Test Championship, took a while to get going in the West Indies Tests. But once he's got going, he hasn't stopped in all formats. And, you know, this augurs really well for Australia because we need him dominating if we have a good Ashes.
Yeah, you're quite right. And I think he's going to build up a lot of confidence. I still am not sold until we see some of that consistency in the early part of the domestic summer. But I think if he can produce that, and same with some of the international fixtures as well, it does augur well for the Ashes. But I think you're right from a mental point of view. And I'm not entirely surprised as well. It took him a little while to get going because at the end of the day, he's coming off a pretty lengthy injury or a lengthy stint on the sideline. So, you know, maybe we're a bit harsh in expecting him to just produce the magic straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, just phenomenal stuff from Australia. So let me go through. Well, let me give you the final score. South Africa were all out for 155 in under 25 overs. So they would have got back to their hotel room nice and early. Cooper Connolly nabbed a little 5-wicket haul, 5 for 22. So a good performance from him. Some cheap wickets there for sure. But there's so many records here I want to strike off now. And these are courtesy of Quick Info. But you just don't often get one game that there's this many records in. So Australia won by 276 runs, which is the biggest ever defeat by South Africa in terms of runs. And it's Australia's second biggest win in terms of runs, only behind their 309-run demolition of the West Indies in 2023. And it's the fourth biggest margin of runs between any full member teams in one-day cricket. So that's quite incredible. It's only the second time in one-day cricket that the top three of any side have made centuries. The first time was South Africa did it against the West Indies in 2015. Obviously, Headmarsh and Green all made hundreds. The runs added by the first three Australian wickets is also the second highest in one-day cricket behind that same game that South Africa played. Green, second fastest one-day 100 for Australia. Now, this is a good one. The scoring rate of Green and Alex Carey's partnership, they put on 164 runs at 12.14. That is the highest for Australia, minimum 150 runs, bettering the record of Maxwell and Shane Watson, who scored at 160 at a rate of 11.7 in 2015. So that was the fastest ever partnership for Australia in one-day cricket. And Carey, I mean, he was good, but he was just nerdling it around and watching Green do all the work.
That's right. I think it's also probably testament to the strike rotation and being aware of who's on strike as well matters in that partnership. And that has to be taken into consideration as well as to having that game awareness. And that's not always the easiest thing. So credit to the both of them. And yeah, I'm surprised that's the fastest ever in history. So there you go.
And then finally, a bit of pub trivia now that's going to stump a few people in the future. Cooper Connolly, forget Shane Warne, forget anyone else you want to throw up there, Adam Zampa, Brad Hogg. Cooper Connolly now has the best bowling figures for an Australian spinner in one-day international cricket. His figures are 5 for 22, beat Brad Hogg's 5 for 32. which he took against the West Indies in 2005. That is quite incredible. And on top of that, he's the youngest ever Australian bowler to take a 5-wicket haul in one-day international cricket, beating Craig McDermott's record. So what a cavalcade of records in that game, Damian. And although it was a dead rubber, I do think it, as I said, nice for the crowd in Mackay to see an Australian victory. That was a bit of a jaw-dropping victory at that. It wasn't, a lazy one-day international. That's a game that no one will ever forget. And in the end, I think the only person that will want to forget it is Marnus Labuschagne. Two failures in the first two one-day internationals, not the series he would have hoping for. And got a question here. If we're recording this on YouTube, NCC Sticks. Do I think Marnus will play the one-day matches against India or focus on playing Shield cricket at the start of the summer? And I was thinking about this, Damian. It's a bit of a quandary for Marnus because there are spots up for grab in that one-day side at the moment. And Marnus will want to play in the one-day side and then play in the World Cup. So, does he forego that opportunity? Because if he scores runs against India in 50-over cricket, that's still going to count for something. Or does he say, no, I'm just going to focus on the Ashes and play Shield cricket? It's a real dilemma.
My inkling, oh no, this is just a gut feel. I'm not basing this on anything, but given the Ashes and how significant the series is and what it means to the players, I think that'll be on his priority list. So my hunch will be that he'll focus more so on the Shield. World Cup's still a little while away, but as far as the ODI format is concerned, I think given the meaning behind the Ashes this summer and how big the summer's going to be, he'd want to be prime in terms of his mindset for red ball cricket coming in. So I reckon he'll favour the Shield. I could be wrong, but that's my hunch.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't know how, like the BCCI and Indian cricket won't want Australia to play second string 11 in these 50-over games. I heard Elisa Healy discussing that the Indian one-day international matches will be really good for the bowlers to get some bowling loads in and get some time in the field. So that's good. That's really good. But yeah, I think it's a delicate balance for Australian cricket because they've got to treat these games against India with respect, but they need their players preparing for the Ashes. And look, on top of that, there's no guarantee players like Usman Khawaja and Scott Boland are going to play every Shield game anyway, because last time they haven't. Usman Khawaja usually plays the home Shield games. Would Marnus play every Shield game? But I think I'm with you. I'd like Marnus to prioritise the Sheffield Shield because getting some time out in the middle against a red ball, making some runs will be the best preparation for the Ashes. But a bit of a juggling act. I can imagine the bowlers will be using the games against India as a warm-up more than the batters because, most of the one-day side, the batting lineup is quite different to the test lineup.
Yeah, I think in Marnus's case in particular, Menners, he wants to get back into form. He has not been in form for a while. So I think in his particular circumstance, he'd want to try and hone his skills when it comes to the red ball game and get some runs under his belt in a long form environment. So I think in his case, it'd be different maybe if you're in form and you're established in that side and pretty good form, you feel comfortable coming into the Ashes. A bit different though for Marnus in the sense that he's looking to score runs again.
Look, and Khawaja's his Queensland teammate. If Marnus really wants to make a play for opening the batting for Australia, he could say to Usman, let's open together for Queensland and try and build a bit of partnership ahead of the Ashes. But we'll see. But yeah, not a good series for Marnus, 2 failures, and then on an absolute peach of a wicket with favourable bowling, doesn't even get a bat when he could have done with some easy runs. You know what's really great from that 6-game top-end series? 4 of the 6 matches were sold out, and Cricket Australia put out a press release that, it's evidence that those communities, really value the Australian national team. And it's true because they get so little international cricket. They did really value it. I didn't have any other big takeaways from that white ball stuff. As I said, a forgettable one-day series, but kind of a little exclamation mark at the end because 4:31, you don't see that very often.
Exactly. And that's what makes it memorable. My takeaway from the series, Menners, to be honest, is seeing more and more of these top-end series going forward. I think it was a success in terms of the figures, in terms of streaming, in terms of crowds. I know it's probably a little bit different if Bangladesh come over compared to South Africa. I think South Africa was a very good test case and probably a better lineup as well compared to some of the other opponents we've had in the top end in the past in various series. But I think there's scope there that it's actually got a decent following behind it. And the fact that the locals embrace it gives it a big tick for me.
I wonder if you could come up with a whole sort of top end 2020 competition for the winter. So I wonder if you could expand the NT strike across the top end, bring in a few new grounds, bring in a few more teams, and play a proper televised winter Big Bash competition where you've got the Big Bash clubs. Obviously, they wouldn't have all their first choice players, but I wonder if you could just get another little sneaky competition in there that's just a level above the NT strike, which is good, but just with a few more grounds. I just wonder if there's an opportunity there in the future with, the
Comes
freedom.
money, Menace.
That's true. It does. All right, we're going to take our first break on Cricket Unfiltered. Then we'll be back with more. You were listening to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm Menace. I'm with Damian Watson. And Damian, not good news for Lance Morris. Good news for batters around the country because the quickest bowler in the country will be out of action for 12 months. So Lance Morris is going to have spinal surgery that has been had by quite a few other Australian fast bowlers. Jason Behrendorff, Gwen Dwarshuis, and a couple of others have had this revolutionary surgery in New Zealand that does, I think they fuse bits of your lower spine together. It's supposed to stop stress fractures. So it means he'll be out for a year. I think it's similar to what Cameron Green had, actually. So he'll be out for a year. And look, it is disappointing because he is our quickest bowler, but I just wonder, it's not such a big blow because I couldn't have seen Morris playing a lot of Test cricket in the next 12 months with our lineup. But my concern is, does he come back and bowling as quickly as he did before the operation, or will he lose a bit? You know, because he's up around that 150 at the moment. Will he sort of peg back to low 140s? I guess that's a concern, but yeah, no Wild thing for the summer, which is a shame.
Yeah, it is, and he's had his fair share of injury travails in the past, hasn't he, Menas? And the word was that he was potentially going to be making a little bit of a return in that recent Australia A series against Sri Lanka A, going back about 6 weeks ago, but it never came to pass. And I think now we know why. There's obviously some continuing issues when it comes to his back. It is a bit of a shame, isn't it? I don't know. Will he ever? I hope for his sake and for everyone's sake as well, he doesn't go down the path of what might have been just purely due to injuries.
Yeah, that's right. Pretty good strike rate with this surgery. A lot of the bowlers in Australia that have had it have come back better than ever and more durable, so fingers crossed. Spencer Johnson is also injured and going to miss the beginning of the summer. A report from Dan Cherney also said Brodie Couch is injured. Bit of a spate of injuries for our fast bowlers. The thing with Spencer Johnson that I noticed is that his injury has just given Ben Dwarshuis a little chance in there as the next left arm option, maybe instead of Mitchell Starc. So, you know, it was always thought that Spencer Johnson would be the natural replacement for Mitchell Starc, but Dwarshuis showed a lot in this white ball series and he just sort of snuck in there. So, you know, that old adage, you never want to give someone an opportunity because they might grab it with both hands and you find yourself on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Now, good news for Marcus Harris fans. You'll like this, Damian, being a Victorian. Ben Horn revealed in the News Court papers that Marcus Harris received a call from the national selectors, George Bailey, after the Steve Smith injury at Lord's to inquire about his whereabouts. So maybe they were thinking that Marcus Harris would be on standby for Smith after he hurt his finger at Lord's. And I think that just gives you a bit of an idea of where Marcus Harris is in the pecking order with the selectors. They do value a pecking order, the selectors. So the fact that Marcus Harris was in the team not that long ago doesn't surprise me. But the fact that he was called with that Smith injury means to me, if he can come out of the blocks in the Shield, he's a real chance at partnering Khawaja.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, the fact that they're in dialogue with him straight away, I mean, that gives you an indication of where he stands in the pecking order. So, yeah, I think you're right. And he's shown a decent amount of form in county level as well. I think that's probably helped his cause, Menas. He didn't have the greatest domestic summer, the one just passed. I hope for his sake, and it sounds like it, his mind has freed up a little bit and that he's not worried about selection. Hopefully this doesn't bring his hopes up to the point where he puts himself under a lot of pressure, coming into the early part of the Shield season, and then the external noise about who's going to take that spot enters his mind. I think that has affected him in the past from what he said. So that'll be the test for him. It will be between the years, I reckon, Menners. But you're right. If he comes out of the blocks, can make a few big scores, which is what he hasn't been able to do in the last couple of summers, he's every chance to get in.
Yeah, he said in that article by Ben Horn that he's ready to go, but of course, what else is he going to say? But I guess is it about the same stage as Kawaja was when he was brought back? Harris is probably not given away his international hopes, but he knows he's getting on a bit and they're kind of fading. So, a second chance right now, he'd probably be able to grab it. And look, I like Marcus Harris. I don't know how he'd go in the Ashes. I think he's got a lot of experience. He's played a lot of county cricket. He would have faced a lot of the bowlers, but I do like him. He's been on the show. He was on during COVID, met his dog, and now he's got a couple of kids, I think. So, a whole new perspective in life. And yeah, he's a good bloke. So if he got another opportunity, I'd be really happy for him. All right. Moving on to our next cricket headline. This is a big one. Belinda Clark, who has the Order of Australia, has been elevated to legend status in the Sport Australia Hall of Fame. She joins she becomes the sixth cricketer with Don Bradman, Richie Benaud, Dennis Lilly, Keith Miller, and Shane Warne, who have been named as legends, and she's the first female cricketer. She will be inducted on November 17th with Andrew Gaze. Obviously, he'll be a legend in the basketball, but I think Gazy works with you at SEN, doesn't he? He does a show there.
Yeah,
Andy Marr.
Yeah, Rippy bloke.
He loves his cricket. He's often having a chat with Andy.
Basketball, footy, and cricket. He's pretty well rounded when it comes to his sporting knowledge. Of course, for those listening from overseas, Andrew Gaze, not only one of our greatest basketballers, but also was the flag bearer for Australia at the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games as well. So he's always been held in high regard. But Belinda Clark, what an honour. And I think well-deserved too, Menners. She was a pioneer in many respects. There's been many others before her, we shouldn't forget, the likes of Rayleigh Thompson and such, who played women's cricket when it wasn't really well publicised. But in the 90s, she really did stand out. You go back to that 97, 98 period. Remember, Australia, I think, played in a World Cup final in 97 from memory Menners in front of 80,000 in Eden Gardens, and she was a key part of that. Real pioneer in terms of taking Australian women's cricket to the next level, and still heavily involved in the leadership space. She's been a great mentor to a lot of young players, probably over the last 10 to 15 years as well. So exudes leadership, highly respected within the cricketing fraternity in Australia. So well done to her.
Yeah, I will say I've met Belinda a couple of times, and she does have an aura about her. Those legendary players carry with them. She carries that aura. So definitely congratulations to her to be her induction into the Australian Hall of Fame. All right, staying with women's cricket, let's duck over to England for a quick update on the Women's 100. The Southern Brave have qualified for the final, and the Northern Superchargers will play the London Spirit to see who will play them in the Southern Brave in the final. Southern Brave have no Australians involved, but the Northern Superchargers have some Australians involved, Phoebe Litchfield, Nicola Carey, and in the London Spirit, friend of the show, but I would say more friend of Damian Watson's, because Damian has had Georgia Redmayne on your show a couple of times. I think you've interviewed her.
It's been a while ago now. I should reach out and see off the back of this, because she's been in good form.
Well, let's get her on. Get her on Cricket Unfiltered or your radio show, either one. But I'd love to have her on Cricket Unfiltered. But yeah, so she's been doing really well for the London Spirit, match winning 42. So that meant the London Spirit played the Northern Superchargers for a spot in the final. And still top three run scorers in the competition, Meg Lanning, Phoebe Litchfield and Grace Harris. So Australians dominating the women's competition a little more than they're dominating the men's competition. In the men's competition, the Oval Invincibles, Trent Rockets and Northern Superchargers have qualified for the finals. Jason Behrendorff plays for the Oval Invincibles, who are in top spot. Marcus Stoinis plays for the Trent Rockets, who are in second spot. But there's not too much happening with the Aussies over there. Steve Smith and David Warner have had quiet tournaments. The three teams that are coached by Australians haven't done too well. So It's been a quiet 100 men's for Australia. I haven't caught much of it, bits and pieces. I'm really going to try and catch the knockout stuff. Unlike the Big Bash, it's a very contained finals. It's the first place goes straight through to the final, 2v3 playoff for the right to play in the final. So there's just 2 finals games. Mark my words, Damian, that will increase very soon because there's too much money involved for it not to. But yeah, I'm going to try and catch those finals games, which are happening this week. But yeah, great to see the Aussies dominating the 100 women's competition.
I think the London Spirit, from memory, going for 2 titles in a row. They won the title last year. Meg Lanning and Redmayne, as you mentioned, are part of that. So that augurs well for the 2 of them if they could go back to back. But yeah, I've watched. The only thing is, it's not time friendly. The men's, I think the matches start at like 3 a.m, don't they? 2 or 3 a.m, and then they finish by the time most people get up in Australia. Whereas at least with the women's, you catch the start of it at 10 o'clock at night. So it's just a bit more time friendly from an Australian point of view to have the first leg of the double header on. So that's how I found it anyway.
And again, I spend far too much time thinking about this, but I want them, if they're not going to go to a T20 competition, I think they should just go to a 17 over competition next year. Now, you could still call it the 100 because 17 overs is 102 balls, Damian. In mathematics, you would round that down to 100. So you could still call it the 100, right? But we wouldn't have all these funky, 5-ball overs and runs per ball and all this stuff that annoys me. So you can have a 17 over game, which would mean it's still shorter than a T20 game, which seems to be really important. And you could I was thinking you could have 4 bowlers bowl 4 overs and the captain can pick 1 bowler to bowl a 5th. So you eliminate that 5th bowler. So not good for bowlers, I'm sorry, but good for batters. And you might see, anyway, that's just my idea. I'm just sick of this 100 balls. Sick of it.
They are getting the crowds, though, Menners. We'll see what crowds they get for the finals as well. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. All right, moving along, some more cricket news. Let's head over to India for our final little chunk of cricket news. Cheteshwar Pujara has retired from cricket. He played 103 tests for India, scored 7,195 runs at an average of 43.6. But it was that 2018-19 Tour of Australia where he made 521 runs in 7 innings that helped India win for the first time in Australia. And Virat Kohli put a message out to Cheteshwar Pujara saying, "Thank you for making my job easier at number 4. Puji, you've had an amazing career. Congratulations, and you wish the best for what's ahead. God bless you." And that's exactly right. Pujara was that classic top order player, Damian, that would lay the foundation, that would tire the bowlers out, that would soak up pressure. We don't see that very often now, but he was one that really frustrated Australia for a couple of series.
Yeah, that 2018-19 summer, Menners, is probably the zenith of his career. I mean, to score, I think it was over 500 runs in that series as well. He was player of the series, if memory serves me correct. And I'm just typing up now the amount of balls he faced, because you mentioned before that, he would ground the opposition into the dirt just through sheer persistence and making them fatigued. Here we go. Faced 1,258 deliveries in 7 innings in that series. Very, very good defensive prowess. So that gives you an indication of his sustainability at the crease.
Yeah, so congratulations to Pujara. And staying in India, and this is a golden opportunity for the Big Bash.
Yes.
Ravichandran Ashwin has announced he will not be playing any more IPL cricket. He has thanked the IPL and the BCCI. So he's free agent now. He said, "I'm open to global T20 opportunities. If I'm Cricket Australia, if I'm a Big Bash club, I am moving heaven and earth to get this guy, because I've said it many times. If you want to make a difference to the Big Bash, get some Indian players. Here is a star. You can't tell me, Damian, that if Ashwin wasn't playing for a Big Bash club, I reckon you'd be adding conservatively 2,000 to 5,000 spectators per game just going to see him. Like Indian fans that live here. We know they live here because they came out last summer to see the Indian team in record numbers. So a Big Bash club could pay for Ashwin just on ticket sales.
Correct. No, I'm with you there. I think if the budget allows it, in fact, even if the budget doesn't allow it, man, I think it's worth
Break the bank.
Yeah, break the bank. I agree. Just through the sheer interest, as you said. Why isn't I'm not necessarily the loop as to why he left the IPL. Is there some sort of underlying reason? Is there a political reason? Or
He's 38. I think he's just getting on. I mean, the IPL is so competitive. They don't carry, not that Ashwin would be a passenger, but he's certainly probably been overtaken by some younger, more dynamic players. But he'd be perfect for the Big Bash. Perfect. Can you imagine when,
like when
another
KP came and
yes, or Babar Azam is playing for the Sixers. If you could get them playing against each other, India v Pakistan in the Big Bash, how good. Anyway, that's news from India. All right, that is it for all the cricket news. Let's wrap it up with Can't Let It Go. That little bit of cricket news you just can't let go through to the keeper. Damian, what have you got?
Well, Australia A played India A recently in the women's men. As you mentioned, Sienna Ginger made a century. I wanted to also shout out from an India A point of view, really enjoyed the performances of Ragvi Bisht. Didn't quite get to a century, but on a couple of occasions came very, very close. Scored 86 and 93 in consecutive matches across different formats. I reckon she's a player to potentially watch out for. She's only 20 years of age. She'll be going on 21. If she can just hone little things in her game, she could be an absolute star for the Indian national team in the years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, my Can't Let It Go is I was listening to a competitors podcast for the love of cricket. It's Stuart Broad and Joss Butler's podcast, and I was listening because they had Justin Langer on, and I love hearing JL talk about cricket. But have a listen to this because I'll tell you my reaction in a sec.
You're busy, man. Just one bit of advice I need. I'm joining you on the 7 commentary team in Australia. How do I survive as a POM?
Oh, especially you, Broady. You got one big advantage, Broady. Now you're one of the brothers to Langer.
I've got you and Haydos either side of me.
Haydos, Ponting, Kadic.
Yeah.
And no one messes with our brothers, mate. So now you're in.
You're busy, man. Just one bit of advice I need.
I just about vomited in my throat when JL said to Broad, "You're one of my brothers now." I mean, JL, have some bloody pride. I mean, the Ashes are on the line. I know you're working with Broady, but to call Broady one of your brothers. Now, I like Stuart Broad. He's a nice guy. I actually do think he's got a sense of humor. But come on, JL. This is the Ashes. You can't be going to our arch enemy. You're one of our brothers. Stuart Broad and Ricky Ponting. Give me a break. Come on. That was one step too far.
He's mellowing in old age, is he, JL?
Absolutely. This is Stuart Broad, for goodness sake.
That's it. Maybe you can offer him a glove. Maybe you can offer him a glove as a peace token. Minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably going to run into Broady during the Ashes, at the lunch table during the Sydney Test or wherever. And I won't be telling him to F off, but I'm not going to be saying you're one of my brothers.
If you worked with him closely, would you call him a brother?
No. I might like him. I definitely might like him, but I wouldn't call him a brother. Yeah. Anyway, I know it was a good interview. I enjoyed JL on that show. All right. Well, that is it for Cricket Unfiltered. Lots to come. So catching up with Jack Edwards, the New South Wales skipper. We're having a chat tomorrow, Thursday, Sydney time. So that'll be out on the weekend. He's heading off to India with the Australia A side soon. He's been playing over in Major League Cricket. So looking forward to speaking to Jack. And I'll be back next week with Damian Watson. So Damian, where can the listeners catch you?
At Damo_Watts on Twitter, Menace.
Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back soon.